help you be a more effective writer. One of the textbooks we assigned for intermediate accounting 1, 2, 3, and in fact all accounting classes is this book right here, Effective Writing, a Handbook for Accountants, by May and May. This is an excellent guide, and unless you're a very strong writer who is very well practiced and accomplished, I strongly suggest you make the small investment for this book. So let's begin by looking at some tips to be a more effective writing. First, you want to make sure that you understand the subject of the document that you are writing. In our courses, you'll be doing a lot of case studies, so the critical thing to understand is the content. What are you being asked? What will you bring to the question that will provide value for the reader? Accounting is a profession. In order for the profession to be valuable, to be worth extra money, you need to provide value. So you're writing for an employer, you're writing for a client. Often, in an accounting issue, there is more than one possible answer. So you want to think about questions that the reader may have. You may want to explore more than one choice. You want to think about a client position that may be communicated to you that may not meet the rules of GAAP, and you want to be able to explain to a client why the position you're recommending is better than the one that they believe is correct. Your writing must be tailored to the audience. Are you speaking to a group of people who have limited accounting knowledge? If that is the case, you cannot use technical terms. You cannot just quote from the standards. Instead, you have to break down the technical jargon and explain it to the level of the audience. If you're writing to an audience of accountants, you can be more technical in your approach. Quality is what is important and not quantity. We are not writing a thesis. We don't need to write 50 pages on a subject. Good business writing is clear and concise. You want to hit every critical point, but you don't want to dwell on them. Write the way you speak. When you try to stretch, when you try to sound intelligent, oftentimes you fall short. Write like you speak. Be comfortable with the words that you choose. Construct sentences that are simple, not compound. Don't try to make a simple issue something more complex than it needs to be. You want the document to flow. You want it to be coherent. So you want to have an organization that leads the reader along. You begin by identifying the issue, speaking about the issue, researching the issue, applying it to the facts of the case, and then drawing a conclusion that relies on the facts of the case and the underlying GAAP concept. Finally, you want to edit. You want to read and review the document. You want to make sure that there are no spelling errors, no grammatical errors. Use the features of the word processor that you're using. Word will highlight misspelled words, will highlight grammatical errors. Be sure that when you choose among a choice of words that may be misspelled, you're choosing the correct word. Finally, Be careful not to plagiarize. Oftentimes, students believe that if they take someone else's word, change around a few words, that is not plagiarism. That is not correct. If you're quoting a source and the source is on point, simply reference the source. You don't need to create your own words. If the source is close to the point you're going to make, use it. In the I.wmv book, they lay out a very good process to develop an accounting document. First, read the assignment carefully. All of our case studies in Intermediate 2 are coming from a textbook. Read the assignment, go back and look at the material that is covered in the chapter that relates to the case study. Look at the purpose of the document. Who are you writing it to? What is your task? Be sure that you understand what the deliverable requires. If a client is asking for an opinion, give a firm opinion. Do not hedge. Hedging does not add value. Identify the accounting issue. In classroom, it's much easier than in practice. Why? Well, the cases are coming from a chapter, and the chapter has limited topics. You can always find the issue within the chapter that the case comes from. Remember, there are many alternatives that are allowed under GAAP. Be sure you understand what these could be, and you include these in your analysis. Don't lock on to one approach. Again, look at the audience. This is critical. These are the people you're looking to add value to. Next, we're going to do our research. Most times, this is going to require us to go to the FASB code. Other times, we may need to go to the financial accounting concepts. Know where you're going to find this information. Remember, the textbook is not an authoritative source, nor is Wikipedia, but neither should be neglected as you do your research. Drafting a paper is important. The key to this is time management. If you sit down and begin to do your paper with less than 12 hours before the due date, you are not giving yourself a chance to draft the paper and think about it. So you want to put your ideas in writing. You want to keep it in an informal manner. You want to organize your thoughts and lay out your presentation. Different people have different styles. The author of the handbook recommends that you don't stop and edit as you go along. Keep a train of thought going. Keep the flow going. Some people will like to begin with the research, go back then and apply the facts to the research, then come up with a recommendation, and then go back and write the beginning, the first paragraph of the paper. This way, right up front, you can write a paper that talks about what you recommend and why you recommend it. Proofreading and revising the document is critical. Very few people can write a paper without a review process. So again, time management is going to come into play here. You need to have enough time so that you can review it. One of the things I strongly recommend is that if you can find someone who matches the audience that you're writing to, you show them your paper. See if they understand what you're talking about. Often a fresh set of eyes is the best editor. So that's the background we're going to have before we get into an example of a case study. And the next video will lead you through an example of how to put together a case study in accounting.